What about Dad?
There's no cure. Go to St. Mark's. Wait for me there. I'll get home. I promise.
First of all, congratulations on the movie. I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, to be completely honest, I was expecting something very different. I was expecting, based on the trailer, I was expecting kind of an adolescent kind of horror comedy type of thing, and it goes down a really, really dark rabbit hole. Was that your intention, especially with the trailer? I don't know how much you were involved with the trailer, but it's kind of pitched towards that kind of an audience.
Yeah,
it's very, very much the opposite.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm glad you like that, and I'm glad you felt that. It's very much intentional. I think the problem with I mean, I've only ever made one feature film before this, and that had no budget, but so this is my first one with a budget. But I think the problem with my filmmaking for a lot of companies is that it is quite hard to market, because I love that mixture of stuff, and I think I wasn't at all involved in the cutting of the trailer. I like the trailer. I think it will hopefully make people watch the film. But yeah, it's very. I think it would be a very hard task to cut a trailer that appropriately represents the changing tones in the film, without just making people go, "What the hell is that?" So I think they chose to, yeah, as you say, go more down the sort of comedy action route. But yeah, I think it was always supposed to. Hopefully, in a successful way, the film was always supposed to feel a bit like a roller coaster. Like you didn't quite know what was coming around the next corner, and I like films that play with tone a lot. But I definitely wanted it to, as the sort of bad decisions racked up, and you know, the situation got worse in the school, I wanted it to get very dark and really sort of. I kind of wanted, you know, that there's the sequence in the library at the end where Max sort of, you know, there's acid and Max executing people and all that, and beating people with books to death and stuff like that. I always love this idea that you'd perhaps not consciously, but you'd be sitting there watching that and then think back to that first scene with the headmaster and go, how the hell did we get here? Like, you know, that sort of gradual downhill thing. Yeah, I like that.
Talking of how the hell did we get here? I mean, not even in your wildest dreams or wildest nightmares could you have imagined that we'd be where we are now when this film released, no?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I don't know if they've sent out any kind of notes or what prep they've done, but we started developing this like 10 years ago, and it's pure luck, the sort of timing of when we almost got it made a few times, and it's pure luck that when it went off, so did Corona, basically.
But I mean, not just coronavirus, but the storming of the Capitol, the Capitol building, all the different. It's like, holy shit, this has all just happened.
Yeah, exactly. I think, I mean, it is just dumb luck, or maybe it's kind of a zeitgeist. I think there's always a bit of zeitgeist in this stuff. You know, maybe the film got made finally because it felt like somehow in the air, some of that stuff was in the air, and then of course it materializes a bit more. I don't know, but yeah, it's very weird and coincidental and lucky, and hopefully helpful for the film. I honestly don't know. I don't know whether.
No, I think it'll play in its fair, because I mean it does tackle timely subjects, no, but in a very different way.
There are people outside those walls who want to take everything we have.
You're in charge now, are you, Beck? You and me. What are we gonna do?
It's been brewing for about 10 years or so. Can you briefly kind of tell me the inspiration? Because I had no idea about these Afterblight chronicles. Afterblight also brings me back to thinking Brexit. I can't help thinking Brexit and Afterblight as well. So how did you get involved with that? And how did that kind of inspire you to get into this film?
I basically read Schools Out, the first of the books, when I was working in a library part-time, like, as I say, a decade ago, before I was even like fully working in the film industry, and said to Emma, the producer, that I thought it would make a great film. And the Afterblight as a wider thing is, as you say, is like a sort of post-viral thing that is very Corona related, but obviously a much worse scenario, like the one we outline in the film. And I think in terms of the books, I personally, I think, and I like this about them, it's really just an excuse to get to a kind of Wild West in rural England, you know, where there's less people, there's no law enforcement, there's, you know, there's nothing to stop mankind indulging in its worst sort of in its worst instincts. But in Britain, which we haven't seen so much, you know, obviously there's a lot of American apocalyptic movies and I think it's an excuse for a playground in the book, basically, or in the books. But of those books, I mean, I haven't even read all of them, if I'm honest. I've read quite a few of them, and they're all good fun. But School's Out was the one that really was the first one I read, and it's the one that really appealed to me as a story. Regardless of the sort of scenario, I thought it was just, yeah, there was just a lot in it. It reminded me of a lot of things of being young, and less the sort of Lee yearning for his parents, which I think is an oddly sort of soft core to quite a hard film, but is something I think we can all sort of relate to. And I thought it was a nice way to explore that kind of apocalyptic environment. So yeah, I mean, the short answer is I like the book. We Emma and I, the producer, bought the rights to it, and we developed it for 10 years, and then it eventually, having nearly got it off the ground a few times, it was Rebellion themselves, when they went into film and TV production, who wanted to make it, because they'd been very involved in we'd always sent them revisions of the script and said, you know, what do you think, and sort of taken their feedback. So they were already in a place where they liked it, basically. So I don't know the ins and outs of it, but it sounds like, you know, on very early in their first meetings as a new production house, they went, well, we've got this script, you know, it's ready to go, let's do it.
Someone's coming. You need to hide us.
Where are they?
How similar is it to the original story? Because I mean, it goes so dark so quickly. Was it that dark? The original material, did it get that dark? Because if it was, it must have been very visceral and very descriptive. If it was,
yeah,
it really
I mean, if
down
anything, yeah. Well, do you know, honestly, if anything, I'd say the book is darker on at least what's the term, aesthetically.
Yeah.
The main bad guys in the book. I mean, firstly, the adaptation's quite heavy. There's a lot of changes, but more because of the way the narrative works in the book. It's told from Lee's first person perspective, and all of these kind of moral quandaries he has are done just in a narrative prose stream. So we needed to sort of externalize it and make it more action based. But the book is great fun, and it's very pulpy. It's very, you know, and Scott, the writer, would not find that an offensive term. It's the bad guys in the book, the Warham people who are the villains in this, are a sort of middle ground in the book, and the actual real bad guys are a bunch of cannibals with sharpened teeth who drink the blood of survivors. They are sort of represented with a nod and a wink in the film by the guy covered in blood in the surgery, but they are the main sort of antagonists. But for us, for making this film, that just felt too, especially sort of 2 weeks after the event or whatever it is, it felt a bit too out there to be doing that, and I felt like I'd seen that before in films, whereas the sort of Morris dancing, pearls and handbags villains I hadn't seen so much. So yeah, they felt like the more interesting ones to follow.
And something that makes the dark material towards the end resonate so more was, I think, because of the camaraderie between the pupils at the school. I mean, it really felt like, I mean, it really took me back to when I was back at grammar school, which has gone back a long time ago, but it really kind of reminded me when I was there. And the kids they've got really great chemistry. Can you tell me a little bit how you created that, and what you were trying to go for? I imagine that you were trying to go for something that was as authentic as possible, so that the final really kind of kicks in when it does kick in. Yeah,
I mean, it's a funny. I mean, the cast were amazing, and they were a huge part of delivering that, I think. And they, in terms of authenticity, I mean, they did become a bunch of friends very quickly, which I think really helps. They're all still, I see them all on Instagram, like they're all still in touch. They're all still, you know, hanging out together and doing projects together and stuff. So that happened very organically, which is great. And I'm glad they come through, because actually, particularly the subsidiary characters, you're kind of Pew and Wiley and stuff, they only get a few lines of dialogue to sort of give their character, because obviously the focus is mostly on Lee and Mac. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I wanted that sense of the gang you used to have at school, and then of course, as you say, rather darkly, what it would be like to see all of those die one by one. It's mostly our brilliant cast. I mean, they really threw themselves into it, and they're all young and obviously by virtue of that less experienced than the older cast, and they were just so excited to be doing the film and so up for I mean, a good example would be that's the sequence in their dormitory where they're all just jumping around and having a party just before they start sitting down and talking more darker stuff. That was just a free run. I just put Tom, the cameraman, in there in the middle of them. I went into the next room with a monitor and just said to them, just be stupid. And they just spent about 20 minutes being completely stupid. And it was pretty, I mean, it's basically all real, apart from they weren't really smoking weed and weren't really drinking. And, and you know, they were able to do that because, as you say, they had a good dynamic and a good sense of camaraderie.
At the same time, obviously we've had films that have seen kind of kids dying in pretty visceral ways. Now, Battle Royale and there's Hunger Games is a little bit kind of a softer version of that now. It's a tough subject to tackle now. Was there any, did you draw any kind of lines, any limits where you didn't want to go past that, or did anyone set you any limits that you said you can go this far, but that's as far as you can go with it?
A little bit. We set our own limits, Emma and I, really, mostly in response to, I think the book, because the book's quite old now, has no real cultural awareness, or maybe a slight cultural awareness of things like obviously guns in schools in the US and things like that, and sort of school massacres and that. So we wanted to, and there is a heavy element in the book of the kids fighting each other within the school, you know, and we wanted to turn that more into a home invasion type thing and make it less about kids shooting each other and more about them defending, you know, the school.
Is my daughter in there?
No.
I don't want anyone hurt.
You can't come in.
You have 24 hours. Bring her to us. Surround the school. Nobody in or out.
I've never been so shocked by a special effect in quite a long time. The next scene, I don't want to give anything away, but the next scene was, wow, that you just knocked it out of the park. That was amazing. It was so realistic. I mean, I know you've worked in special effects before. I imagine you were to blame for that, no? It was fantastically done.
Yeah, basically. I mean, thank you. It's in fact that I did the actual shot where you see that was we had a couple of great VFX teams working on the film. There's one in-house in Rebellion, and there's one called Vine Effects. But that specific shot of the neck I did myself because I wanted to sort of get the grunginess out of it. It's thanks. I mean I wanted to kind of capture that weird thing that I don't know if normal people did, but I had at school with my friends, where it was like, it's also with the pencil up the nose of the headmaster, or the pen up the nose of the headmaster when they find it, like that those weird conversations you would have at school about how you could kill each other with inanimate objects in the school. There was a folklore in my school about someone who put a pencil up their nose and slammed their head on the desk. So that's where the headmaster came from. I think that folklore was at every school ever. And then, I remember at school once having a conversation about how about exactly what Mac does. Like if you were to put a chair on someone's neck and then jump on it, you could like break their neck. And it's always stayed with me, that conversation. And so we put it in the film because it needed this aesthetic of you know, using school apparatus as weapons.
Obviously, I mean, there's various books in these chronicles, no? I think even go as far as Iraq and the White House, and also if things go to plan and it's successful, which I'm hoping it will do. I honestly believe it will do. Is there talks of taking it further?
Yes, we've been talking exactly along those lines, a little bit with Rebellion, as in I think obviously they will wait to see what happens with this film, but there's certainly been a few treatments and things passed back and forth with what we might do with a sequel. And as you say, we have a very strong template with the book. So yeah.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time, Ollie. I wish you the best of luck next week with the film. I'm pretty sure it's going to turn out really well.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your kind words.
Stay alive. It's what your mum would want now. What are you doing?
What? I just thought...
No.